Welcome back everybody, I'm Jaran Gerber, your host, and today I'm going to react to a video called You'll Never Look at Transformers the Same Way Again. Now for new updates and content you can visit the links in the description down below, and let's get started. Enjoy.
Autobots, roll out. If those three words just triggered a full-body flashback to Saturday mornings, Fruit Loops, and carpet that still had vacuum lines in it, you're exactly who this is for. There's something nobody warned us about when we were kids. The heroes we grew up with, the ones who showed us what courage, sacrifice, and doing the right thing actually looked like. They had an ending. And for Transformers, that ending wasn't just surprising. It was the kind of thing that sits with you for decades. We're going to walk through the entire story of the original series, from that first transformation to the moment Optimus Prime's light went out for good. Some of it you'll remember perfectly, some of it might hit differently now than it did when you were 8. Either way, it's worth going back.
There he is! Get him! Fire!
The story, Part 1. The world and premise. When Transformers first aired in 1984, it dropped us into something genuinely unlike anything we'd seen before. Giant robots. From space. That turned into cars, jets, and weapons. It was like someone reached into the collective imagination of every kid who'd ever crashed Hot Wheels together and asked, what if they were actually alive? The central conflict was beautifully simple on the surface and impossibly epic underneath. The heroic Autobots, protectors of peace and freedom, were locked in an endless war against the villainous Decepticons. Both factions had fled their home planet of Cybertron, crash landing on Earth millions of years ago, and then reawakening in our modern world, confused, powerful, and very much still at war. The prize? Resources. Power. Ultimately, control of the entire universe. What made this world stick wasn't just the transforming gimmick, which was genuinely cool even then. It was the mythology underneath it all. These weren't just machines, they were ancient warriors with honor codes, rivalries that spanned millennia, and a civil war that had already consumed their entire civilization before they ever set foot on our planet. That weight came through even in a kid's cartoon, especially in a kid's cartoon. There was a sense, even watching it as a child, that you were arriving late to something enormous, something that had been going on long before humans existed and would continue long after. And now that war was unfolding in our backyard, in quarries and city streets, and places that looked vaguely like places we knew. The heroes we wanted to be. Optimus Prime wasn't just the leader of the Autobots. He was the standard a lot of us quietly held ourselves to, even if we couldn't have articulated it at the time. That deep, resonant voice, Peter Cullen's voice, though he didn't know his name yet. That unwavering moral compass. The way he charged into impossible odds, not because he was fearless, but because he decided that someone had to stand between evil and the innocent. And it might as well be him. Prime taught an entire generation that real strength wasn't about winning fights, it was about protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves. His code was simple, and he never bent it. Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Full stop. Around him, the team was a genuinely well-drawn ensemble. Bumblebee, the small yellow scout who proved that size meant nothing when your spark was big enough, and whose friendship with the human kid Spike gave the whole show an emotional anchor. Jazz, the cool lieutenant whose swagger made every kid want to be him, not just watch him. Ironhide, the grizzled veteran who'd clearly been through too many battles but showed up anyway. Ratchet, the team medic who was always patching someone up and always seemed quietly worried about his friends. Prowl, the tactical mind who kept his head when everyone else was running hot. What made the Autobots different from every other cartoon hero team was something that's hard to name but easy to feel watching those episodes back now. They worked together because they genuinely cared about each other, not just as soldiers following orders, but as something closer to family. And that bond, once you understood it, made everything that came later hurt considerably more.
Hold it! Stop fighting! What in the universe is going on here?
The villains we loved to hate. Megatron was terror given form, and Frank Welker made sure you felt it. Where Optimus Prime inspired something like hope, Megatron embodied cold, calculating menace. That fusion cannon, that sneer, the voice that dripped with contempt for everything the Autobots stood for. What made him truly frightening wasn't just raw power, it was his absolute conviction. He genuinely believed the strong deserved to rule, that compassion was weakness, that the universe belonged to whoever was willing to take it, and he'd spent millennia proving he was that someone. There was no self-doubt in Megatron, and somehow that made him scarier than any amount of firepower could. His Decepticons were a memorable gallery of specific, distinct personalities. Starscream, the treacherous second-in-command who spent every episode scheming to overthrow his master, usually unsuccessfully, always entertainingly. Soundwave, whose voice and cassette-launching chest made him genuinely unsettling in a way that's hard to explain, but impossible to forget. The Seekers, Thundercracker and Skywarp, raining destruction from above with a kind of efficient menace. Every confrontation between Prime and Megatron carried real weight. You could feel the history between them. Two ideologies given physical form, locked in a conflict that had already outlasted civilizations and showed no signs of ending. Both of them knew that, and it showed in every exchange, even the brief ones. These weren't enemies who hated each other the way strangers hate. They knew each other too well for that.
Prime, we'll take care of you.
Absolutely the greatest cartoon ever.
The Story, Part 2. The most memorable episodes and arcs. Some episodes burn themselves into memory so completely they're still vivid 40 years later. More Than Meets the Eye, that 3-part pilot that introduced everything. The crash, the awakening, the first time Optimus Prime transformed on screen and you realized something in your understanding of what cartoons could be had shifted. The multi-part episodes were where the series really shined. Stories that spanned weeks, stakes that kept building, alliances forming and fracturing. The show understood that this war wasn't going to wrap up in 22 minutes, and it respected its audience enough to take its time. Then there were the smaller character moments that stuck just as hard. Bumblebee protecting Spike when everything went wrong, proving the smallest Autobot had the biggest heart. Prime making impossible calls and visibly carrying the weight of them afterward. Even Starscream got moments of unexpected depth. You almost pitied him, this brilliant tactician constantly undone by his own ambition. Almost. The robots wrestling with very human feelings. Loyalty, fear, hope, the particular exhaustion of an endless war was what kept kids watching. It's also what keeps those episodes watchable now.
Not so fast.
The ongoing mission. Over 3 seasons, the war evolved in ways that kept the series from feeling repetitive. The Autobots established their base on Earth, and the human characters who got folded into the conflict, Spike and Sparkplug especially, became genuinely important rather than just audience surrogates. The Decepticons chased new power sources relentlessly, those Energon cubes that could fuel everything they wanted to do. The stakes escalated steadily. Battles moved from Earth to Cybertron and back. New characters joined both sides, and ancient Cybertronian secrets emerged that recontextualized the war entirely. What the series handled particularly well was cost. Major victories came with real losses. Characters we'd grown attached to would fall, sometimes permanently. The question stopped being whether the Autobots would win. You always assumed they would, somehow, and became whether they could survive long enough to see what winning even looked like. That shift in dramatic tension, from will they beat the bad guys to what is this war costing them, was more sophisticated storytelling than a toy commercial had any business delivering. And yet... The movie, The True Ending. The Transformers the movie landed in August 1986, and it broke a lot of us in ways we're still sorting out.
Yeah.
The film opened with something that had no real precedent in children's entertainment: a planet being consumed. Unicron, a mechanical god of destruction roughly the size of a small moon, devouring entire worlds as casually as we'd eat cereal. This wasn't Saturday morning anymore. This was something darker, and kids felt the shift immediately. Then the Decepticons launched a devastating assault on Autobot City, and within the first 20 minutes, the film made its intentions clear. Prowl, Ratchet, Ironhide, Brawn, Wheeljack, gone. Not incapacitated, not retreating, permanently offline, their optics dark, their colors draining. Parents sitting in theaters had no warning. The toy commercials hadn't mentioned any of this. The final confrontation between Optimus Prime and Megatron, the one the whole series had been building toward without ever quite delivering, happened here. Both of them battered, both of them running on will more than anything else, fighting with everything they had. Megatron found a hidden weapon. Prime took the shot meant for someone else. Optimus Prime died. His color faded. His light went out. Children cried openly in theaters across the country. Some had to leave. It wasn't supposed to work this way. Heroes weren't supposed to lose like this. The grief was completely real. And if you were the right age for it, you probably remember exactly where you were sitting when it happened. Megatron, gravely wounded and abandoned in space by Starscream, because, of course, Starscream, was recovered by Unicron and rebuilt into Galvatron, more powerful, genuinely terrifying, and stripped of most of what had made Megatron interesting. Evil found a way to continue, as it always does. The movie was the defining cinematic event of our particular childhood. Epic, devastating, and completely unforgettable. Years later, Hasbro acknowledged that it had been too much too soon for the target audience. The goal had been to clear the board for new toy characters, and in doing so, they'd accidentally traumatized an entire generation. They'd also, entirely by accident, created the defining emotional memory of that generation's childhood entertainment. We never forgot. We never stopped caring. That was always the thing about these characters. They meant something. The final television episodes. The TV series wrapped up officially with The Rebirth in November 1987, a 3-part miniseries that introduced the Headmasters and Target Masters, a new technological evolution where Transformers could bond with smaller partners to create new power combinations. The Autobots thwarted the Decepticons' latest scheme, this one involving a plasma energy chamber, and that was more or less that. It wasn't a tidy conclusion. The overarching war was still unresolved. The ending felt more like a pause than a proper farewell. These battles would presumably continue, just somewhere we couldn't follow. For American audiences, this was the last new episode, but it never felt truly final, because the ending that actually mattered had already come and gone, in that theater in 1986. Optimus Prime was eventually brought back in the TV series, which softened things somewhat. But for those of us who sat through the movie first, the lesson had already landed. Heroes could die. Sacrifice was permanent and real. Nothing was guaranteed to last. That's a lot to absorb when you're 8, and the fact that it came wrapped in a cartoon about transforming robots made it land harder somehow, not softer. The legacy and what came after. The series ended, but the world it built didn't. Japan continued the story with several exclusive sequel series that went well beyond The Rebirth. Marvel's comics run became something of a legend in its own right, taking the mythology in directions the cartoon never could, and developing characters with a depth the animation budget didn't always allow. Beast Wars in the 90s earned genuine admiration from fans old and new, using CGI to tell a surprisingly mature story that proved the concept could evolve without losing what made it work. The Michael Bay films brought Transformers to a whole new audience and made an enormous amount of money, which is its own kind of legacy. The nostalgia for Generation 1, that specific configuration of characters, that particular era, has never really faded. Conventions celebrate those original designs with a devotion that goes well beyond casual fandom. Collectors pay serious money for original toys in good condition, and there's a certain kind of person, and we know who we are, who still gets a specific feeling hearing Peter Cullen's voice come out of a speaker. That's not nostalgia for a product. That's something closer to affection for a version of yourself that believed in things simply and completely. The property is still very much alive, with new cartoons, toys, and films in various stages of development. But for those of us who were there at the beginning, who rushed home from school, who sat in those theaters, who learned what grief felt like from a cartoon about robots, the original will always occupy a particular place.
Absolutely.
Nothing else quite gets there. From that first transformation to Optimus Prime's final stand, Transformers gave us more than a cartoon about robots. It gave us heroes worth believing in, a mythology rich enough that people are still exploring it 40 years on, and a lesson no other show quite dared to teach. Even the greatest heroes can fall, and sacrifice is the truest measure of who someone really is. Optimus Prime carried the matrix of leadership. He also carried the hopes of every kid who needed to believe that good could win. Which Transformer were you? Optimus Prime? Bumblebee? Quietly, maybe secretly, Starscream? Drop it in the comments. And if this trip back to Cybertron hit you somewhere real, the subscribe button's right there. Till all are one. Aha!
Testing the Negavator that started our problems. We're just glad to have you back.
So that was You'll Never Look at Transformers the Same Way Again. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I must say, this is probably the greatest cartoon that ever aired on the small screen. It is my number one favorite cartoon, and Robotech is after that. We have to take into consideration that Challenge of the GoBots came before Transformers, and when Transformers aired, it revolutionized the world. I mean, look at all the movies and cartoons that came afterward, and many more figures tied to Transformers. I mean, if you go to a local shop, almost every single robot that you encounter has a link towards Transformers. That being said, over the years I've also collected many Transformers memorabilia. For instance, here's my all-time favorite robot called Devastator. And people will be saying, you've wasted your money. Why not buy the Constructicons individually? I thought about that, but then I told myself, buy their stats individually. So it's a win-win situation. And here's my favorite comic of all time. I first bought this I was in Luxembourg, but it was an A4 format. So I managed to track it down after all these years. Seriously, my favorite episodes of Transformers Generation 1 are obviously More Than Meets the Eye, Part 1, 2 and 3, Fire in the Sky, SOS Dinobots, A Plague of Insecticons, and Heavy Metal War is another one. And a word of wisdom for today: be strong enough to be gentle. Have a blessed day further, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.